I turned it around, and today I feel completely different than I did however long ago when I felt like my life wasn't mine. Today I'm going to share with you 5 things that actually have truly changed my life. They are not BS, not fluffy. I'm sick of that. I'm sick of watching videos of things and tips that are either unattainable or unrealistic for me as a busy mom who works full time. Whatever the case may be, these are changes that I made in my life despite the fact that it felt like I had no room for improvement because, well, there was lots of room for improvement, but no time or space, mental, on my calendar, physical, whatever, to make those changes. Despite the fact that I felt totally lost and like I was just a victim of my circumstance. Despite that feeling, I implemented lots of changes, put in a lot of time and inner work, and thanks to especially these 5 that I'm going to share today, I truly feel like the meest me that I ever have been or ever could be. And the problem isn't that now I'm someone different, it's that I got away from me when I had babies and got caught up in a stressful job and had so much masculine demand on my life that I lost myself. So if that story sounds familiar, if that's something that resonates with you as, hey, that sounds like me, then you're in the right place. And please know that I get you and I know how you feel. And I know that the last thing you need is someone spouting out fluffy BS to you. So that's not what I'm doing today. Hi, I'm Amanda. Thanks for being here. I'm a busy full-time working mom of 2 toddlers, and I thrive in my feminine energy despite the fact that I have all these masculine demands in my life, and I help women just like you do the same. So let's get into it. And I don't want to spend too much time here on my story, my before, but I think it's important to understand why these things in particular have had an impact on my life, and whether you can even suss out if this is even a video that you need to keep on watching, because if my story sounds like yours, then it probably is. So before I implemented these 5 changes, my life felt like it wasn't mine, for lack of a better word. Aside from being someone's wife, someone's mom, someone's employee, I felt like I wasn't a person. I felt like I was just doing what I needed to do for the different demands I had of my life. I didn't do anything for myself. I didn't do anything that actually made me feel better. I would do things like take a bubble bath in the evenings, once every 2 weeks, and that was nice. But when I was in the bath, I would scroll TikTok, and that was draining. Or I would eat a pint of ice cream because that was something fun to do, but it wasn't for me. It was something that I did to just sort of put a band-aid on the moment. Or I would drink too much wine or whatever. The list goes on and on of things that you do for yourself, but they don't actually serve you. They are an escape, but escaping isn't the same as actually taking care of and doing something for yourself. And I felt like I had no control. I was either my time and my mental capacity was taken up by either my kids or my work. Any extra time that I had, I tried to pour into my husband, but I was so depleted that I barely had anything to give to him. Never mind any sort of female friendships or anything else. I felt like I had no control over my brain space or my time. And the few little bits of spare time that I did have here and there, I filled with stuff that honestly just made me feel worse overall, even if it felt like it was doing me a favor in the moment. So know that the things that I'm about to share with you, they're not things that were taking me from in an easy life to my best case scenario life. These are things that got me from feeling so low with just my life and my existence, and it makes me so sad to even say or think that, but it's honestly how I felt, to feeling like my base level happy. And what I think is so beautiful is that the changes that I needed to make needed to get me not to this exciting, exhilarating place in my life, but rather they needed to take me out of the hole and just into like a level, peaceful, calm state. And that's where I live now. I don't feel like I don't have any control over my life. I don't feel like a victim of my circumstances. I feel in control of my life and my time, despite the fact that nothing has changed. My kids don't need me less. My job isn't any less demanding. My husband didn't go anywhere. In fact, we spend so much more time together, which I'll get into. But despite the fact that none of the masculine demands of my life changed, I was able to completely change my life. So I don't want to go on about this anymore. You've heard enough about me. I just really wanted to share my heart so that way you could, kind of figure out whether it resonated with you or not. So I'm going to get into the 5 things now that actually made an impact on my life. And I'm not joking. I'm not kidding around. They had a big impact. The biggest shift that I saw in my life was not that I had more time, but it's that the impact of being more intentional with my time had. And that leads me into my first point, which is I gave up mindless scrolling. And this one was really hard because I realized it was such a crutch for me whenever I felt bored, whenever I felt slightly challenged, whenever I had to do something I didn't really feel like doing, whenever I felt brain dead and I just wanted like a tiny little dopamine hit. And I know that you've heard this tip before, so I know I'm not being revolutionary, but maybe my experience can be motivating to you. I couldn't just go in and do it. Like, I still had the accounts. I still had the accounts on my iPad, so I would check. I don't look at Facebook or TikTok at all anymore, but I do get on Instagram probably like once a day, but I do not fill my time with that anymore. And you would probably be so surprised at how many little 5 to 10 minute to half an hour pockets of time you have all throughout the day that are sucked into this thing that just like disappear into nothingness. So for the most part, I just stopped doing those things and I became so much more focused and productive with my work. The evening times after school weren't as crazy because I wasn't missing 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, whatever. It was just like everything in my life became so much easier when I stopped giving into that time suck. And what I did instead of, because you do have those times when, I don't know, you're in like the car drop off or whatever, when you do have like time that it makes sense to do nothing but dig into something like that. I started reading audiobooks. I have the Kindle app, so I've always been like a big fan of my Kindle, but I didn't read on my phone much. But I put the Kindle app on my phone so I could read on my phone if I needed to fill gaps, like if I was standing at the grocery lineup or something. Or I spent more time on Pinterest and I would do things like look at recipes and those kinds of things. Even though they are also kind of like useless tasks, they still are more like fulfilling to your soul than scrolling on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. So whatever you identify as your mindless crutch, just get rid of it. And for the most part, you're gonna find that you have more time in your life, or the little pockets of time that you do still waste away can be spent on more nourishing things like reading a great book or looking for new recipes or daydreaming about your next vacation, whatever. The next thing that had a huge impact on my life was learning about and healing my wounded feminine energy. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about this here because like every other video on my channel is about feminine energy, probably more than every other video. So you can check out one of those many millions of videos that I have specifically about feminine energy. But basically, like in a whole, what it's done for me is it has made life so much easier, because feminine energy is all about leaning back and doing less and being more aligned with who you really are. And I didn't realize until I had really started learning about feminine energy that my wounded feminine energy was almost responsible for like almost all the problems that I had in my life, because the overarching feeling that I had was that I'm just living a life that is wrong. I'm living, not so much my life was wrong, but the way I was living it was wrong because it was so out of alignment of my feminine energy. So the more effort and work I put into focusing on that, the more easier and enjoyable my life became because I felt so much more aligned with who I actually was. It was like all of the circumstances in my life and all the things that I was doing was kind of attacking that feminine energy. And so when I became aware of it and the changes that I needed to make, it was like the real, most comfortable me just came to the surface, and that's been so profound. Now, this next one, I know you've heard, and it's to just take care of myself, but for the sake of, and the only goal being to actually take care of myself and feel good. So that meant like I wasn't on a diet. I wasn't on any sort of like restriction or whatever. I wasn't working out really hard or anything. The opposite, actually. I took on or adopted a consistent yoga practice. I started going for walks outside in the sunshine. One big thing is that I noticed that when I had a sweet breakfast, my whole day was like so much more sleepy and slumpish. Whereas if I have a savory breakfast, there's still carbs in there, there's some good healthy fat, whatever. It's not about like making it fit like a sort of diet that would change my body. It wasn't that. It was just literally, I just did anything that felt good. And a lot of the time you think that like, oh, having that chocolate croissant, that'll feel good. No, it's actually sabotage. And that doesn't mean that you can never have treats or whatever. I definitely do, but it's like in the right moment. I know that I'm not going to have chocolate after lunch because it's going to make my whole afternoon feel sleepy and tired, but I might have that chocolate after dinner and indulge in dessert because it's okay that I feel kind of slumpish after dinner before bed. And if I'm going to really enjoy that treat, it's not about depriving yourself. It's about respecting yourself enough to do the things that actually are going to feel good to you. And the number one, you know what I'm going to say, get enough sleep. But I started getting enough sleep like almost at no cost of anything else. The way I go about life, getting 7+ hours a night, which even 7 is probably not like my ideal amount. Probably my ideal amount would be like 8 hours, but as a full-time working mom, it's really hard to get more than 7 hours. So I'll go with that. But that's a lot better than my 5 to 6 hours that I was averaging for years. So it's quite a difference and has made quite an improvement. Next is I started prioritizing relationships, and I realized along the way of losing myself, I also lost, not fully lost, but I lost the depth of other relationships in my life. And I give myself a lot of grace for that because as a new mom and a mom of any age of children who has a full life, who's working full time, has whatever other obligations, you do have to make choices, and you don't have time for everything, and you don't have time for everyone that you maybe once did. So you do have to be somewhat selective and make those choices. But I took it too far, and I kind of accidentally, without realizing, kind of pushed everyone away. And so when I realized that and really prioritized coming back to myself, I realized that I had to bring those people back with me. So I will say the one relationship I always prioritized was my marriage, which good thing I did. I don't know what I was trying to preface with that, whatever. Through all that, I can at least say that I always prioritize my marriage, not always in the very best way. Nothing is ever perfect, but there's always room for improvement. I believe there's always room for improving and improving the relationship with your partner and getting closer and getting stronger. I think there's always room to grow there. So I just started spending a lot more time with him and like really good quality time. So not like Netflix nights where we'd fall asleep 15 minutes into the show or whatever. I can't stay awake during a show to save my life. So we would do a lot more active things like play games or just sit on the couch and talk or whatever. We're a lot more intentional with our time and started doing other things a lot more too, and that was fun and has been great. I've also put more effort into my friendships, and I always knew that female friendships were important to me, and I let some fizzle out over the years, and I take responsibility for that. And I am so grateful for my friends who are still here and who I've built a stronger relationship with since making these changes, and it's been a really beautiful thing. I've also made new friends, and we moved to like a completely different part of the country about 2 years ago. We didn't know not one soul here, and we have since had some good friends move here, which has been amazing. But there's definitely, that can be lonely. And so I did put myself out there a lot. I don't want to say I did make a lot of friends. I have acquired a lot of acquaintances. And I think of it kind of like dating. It's not easy to go on all these little like half-assed surface level friendship dates with people that you don't really know. You get to know each other. You have the same like surface level questions. I've never dated because I met my husband in high school, so I never went through like a phase of like a bunch of first dates with different people. I can kind of imagine that it's similar, but anyways, it's not easy to put yourself out there and then for a lot of the times for it to like fizzle into nothing. And I don't take it personally. I'm sure like half of it is probably because they don't jive with me, and that's totally fine. But I think half of it is it's just like I'm busy and I've got my own issues, so do they. And so it takes a lot of work to cultivate friendships. And so I've just made it my priority to do that more so with girlfriends. And I have seen wonderful friendships blossom from putting in the effort. I also started talking to my family more and just putting in more of an effort. I started noticing my mom always calls me. I never call her. And then time will go by and we'll be like, oh, she hasn't called me for a little while. That sucks. And then I was like, why am I not calling my mom? Like, for example. So, and just calling my grandparents more, everything like that. It's very easy to take friendships and family relationships for granted because you just assume that they're always going to be there and they're always going to be available for you to like pick up and re-nurture those friendships or relationships. But one, that's not always the case. And two, even if it is, why waste now? You don't have forever. No matter what, you don't have forever. So nourish those relationships now. Now the fifth one, this last one, it's a really cool one. And everything on this list really changed my life. But this one is like not one that I expected. And that is to really work with your personal energy levels. And what I mean by that is on a micro and a macro level. So on a micro level, pay really, really good attention to your energy levels at different times of the day. For example, do you have more energy in the morning? Do you have more energy at night? Are you a night owl who gets this like creative kick? Do you thrive in the afternoons? Do you have a terrible afternoon slump? Maybe you only have a terrible afternoon slump when you have a chocolate bar after breakfast or after lunch, Not after breakfast. I hope no one's eating chocolate bars at breakfast. And if you are, whatever, live your best life. But think about whether or not that actually is you living your best life or not. Anyways, I digress. Paying attention to all those things, like how I talked about how I swapped out a sweet breakfast, even if it was like a fairly healthy-ish sweet breakfast, having any sort of sweet breakfast, even if it just had a lot of fruit, compared to a savory breakfast with some fat to sustain me and some good hearty protein, that has a huge impact on my day. And I'm not even talking about any sort of like exterior benefits that come from that. Just how you go through your day. Like what you eat impacts the work that you produce. It impacts how you interact with your kids. I'm not very nice when I'm hungry. I'm also not very nice when I'm having a sugar crash. I'm not very nice before I've had my first cup of coffee in the morning. And so pay really close attention to those things and make those energy levels, those ebbs and flows work for you. For example, I am by far a morning person. After 7 p.m., I'm useless to the world. And I know that about myself. And I used to try to use that time because, again, my time's really limited. I have 2 kids. I work a full-time job. After my kids go down for bed, that's when you would think I would have my time to work on something like this YouTube channel. But that's just not what works for me. That was like working uphill. So what I did instead is I get up at 2:45 or 3 a.m. and I get in like an hour and a half of YouTube work before I need to get ready for my real job. And to some people that sounds absolutely crazy and you're like, I can never get up that early. That's fine. No one's asking you to. I'm just asking you to pay attention to yourself and your own energy levels. And as women on a macro level, your energy levels go through crazy cycles during your menstrual cycle. And so something for me, I am very aware of the fact that like 3 days before my period, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to talk to anyone, whatever. Like, I am dead to the world. I am grumpy to the world. So I plan out my time so that when I need to, like for this YouTube channel, for example, I'm going to have the video ready to go for that week prior to that week. I don't want to have to be working on this video because I need to get a video up on Sunday during that time when I know that I'm going to be fighting against a lot of resistance. I want to work with my body, with my cycle, and there's only so much you can control that, right? I can control when I work on this passion project of mine, but I can't control whether or not I go to work for my full-time job. So, you do what you can, and it's just about optimizing to the best of your ability and knowing that you're not going to be able to optimize your life 100%, but it is very valuable to be aware of it. Thank you so much for sticking around. This video it felt very long and very rambly, and I'm sorry for that. I typically make my videos a lot more structured and organized to avoid this because I'm definitely a rambler at heart. But this one, it just felt more right to do it like totally off the cuff. So if you're still here, my goodness, thank you so much. It means the world, honestly. If you have anything to share about things that have like actually made a positive impact on your life, no BS tips only, please share it in the comments below to help someone else in this community. I'll see you next time. Stay aligned.